Hello, welcome, and a very good evening to you. Manchester United, of course, host Spurs this weekend at Old Trafford in what should be a remarkable clash as the Premier League will head into the international break after this weekend. So the results of this game will sort of linger around for a bit, and another loss is absolutely going to be heartbreaking for United at the back of those four losses to Spurs last season, including that extremely frustrating 1-0 loss in the final of the Europa League. Of course, both the sides have had a lot of changes made to their overall system, squads since last season. Ruben Amorim has maintained his place while Big Ange, of course, got the sack. Thomas Frank has come in. Of course, his setup has been touted by Spurs' fans to be extremely defensive, extremely boring in a way. And the last game against Chelsea, of course, was quite exemplary of that, which of course we'll go deeper into in a bit. But for now, both these sides look to be very different from what they were last year. Manchester United, of course, playing at the back of these four relatively decent games that they've had. I mean, of course, the draw against Forest will sort of feel like a loss to them after those three exceptional wins, including that 2-1 against Liverpool. But a lot to look forward to. I feel like this game could define how the season goes for United, how they can ride that momentum, how they can make sure that a struggling side like Spurs is essentially put into its place. Now, let's just take a moment to talk about Tottenham here. And before even going into what United can expect from them on Saturday, here's a quick clip of what happened in the last game against Chelsea. Dude, I mean, what is up with these clowns? Only at Spurs will you see a team in front of their home crowd recording an XG of 0.05, a single shot on target, and then after the game, your centre halves have the attitude and the gall to just snub your manager when he's trying to apologize, trying to just go around and applaud the fans for showing up, or even staying till the end in such a horrendous fixture, and then all of this happens. It's just unbelievable at this point. Uh, or I guess it is since it's Spurs. But in any case, let's also take a look at some of the numbers and what United can expect when they line up against Spurs this weekend. Now, this is, of course, how Spurs lined up against Chelsea last weekend, and I think United can expect something similar. They also play the same system midweek in the Champions League with a few substitutions. I think in terms of the United game, Berryval, of course, will not start. He was taken out very early in the Chelsea game, injured, and basis midweek, and I guess the only logical replacement that Spurs have, I think it's Wilson Odobert, who will play in that left wing position. He's had a very average season so far. Honestly, I just don't feel like this central pivot of Bentancur and Palhinha is going to cut it. I just feel like this setup where Thomas Frank relies a lot on narrow gameplay as opposed to the wingers just sort of spreading out wide, giving Kudus a lot of the ball and just having him run down that right hand side and providing those crosses into the box. I just feel like that is not happening a lot. Uh, Either you have someone like a Bruno Fernandes playing that deeper role. In this case, it would be Bentancur, as Bruno has also done that a lot this year for United with the front three solidifying in Mbumo, Cunha, and Shesko. Or in fact, even Mount starting a lot in that central role ahead of him. I just feel like Bentancur does not have that industry to kind of put those long balls forward for someone like Kolo to lurch upon. Right, so of course, no significant, no consistent attacking threat for Spurs up front. No industry when it comes to that role which Javi Simmons was essentially brought to fulfill. But I think as you see from the latest games, I think Sarah's been starting more often. Sarah's been spending more time on the pitch than Simmons. Clearly an indication of how they fared in training, what Thomas Frank has seen from Simmons in terms of trying to dribble past defenders, trying to just maybe fall that much deeper, collect the ball, something that Cunha has been doing exceptionally well for United. I think barring that last Forest game, he's been really good at it. I think Javi Simmons is being he's basically being trained for that, but just has not reached that level yet, which is why Sar is started in front of that defensive pivot of Palina and Bentancur, both of whom again have, I mean, they've just had a lot of average keeping of possession, but just not that industry to kind of find their striker into empty spaces. So all of this is creating a very average side that is perhaps retaining a lot of the possession, but just not able to convert or create chances even, which I think is pretty evident from what you see on the screen, or rather what you don't see on the screen, which is Spurs in this list of the top Premier League sides with a high XG this season. Crystal Palace, City, and United, of course, have been very impressive. Crystal Palace comes as a surprise, and to some extent, United as well. United, of course, have had a lot of those long balls created from a defensive position of Bruno Fernandes, just throwing it down the right to Mbumo, who's just then dribbled onto his left foot and either scored or just put it into a dangerous area for Shesko and Mount oftentimes when he's playing in that advanced role. Of course, Spurs have lacked that industry, and if you just go down slightly, you'll find them quite low on this list, which is again testament to what they're significantly lacking in terms of that attacking threat. The Chelsea game was is I mean it's as exemplary as it gets, a 0.05 XG in front of your home crowd against a formidable side like Chelsea. Of course, I mean you're aware that Tottenham have been known to play. In fact, Thomas Frank has been known to play a very defensive setup when it comes to the big six sides. He often indulged in a back five at Brentford when he played big sides, including when they won 4-0 at United. When Mbumo, Ben Mee had also scored in that game. Quite embarrassing as it was. But yeah, so you'd expect something defensive from him, which is precisely what he put up. Against Chelsea, he plays a very narrow, a very man to man kind of a setup with four at the back. But again, the defensive pivot, the central three were not able to deliver anything pretty much. Kolomwani also left with a blank, was also subbed off quite early. It was a very, very dismal, a very average game played by Spurs. All right, so finally, this is how United lined up against Forest last season. This is also how you'd expect them to play against Spurs. I think the only exception that remains to be seen is Harry Maguire. Of course, we'll know closer to the game if he is deemed entirely match fit and if his appearances in training are satisfactory as well. Licha, of course, has been training quite energetically, quite profusely, but I don't think he'll be started by Amorim, as he indicated that waiting it out is much more beneficial in the longer run than trying to get him back in earlier. I think that's one of the things that's happened so many times in the past. I think at least twice in the past where Licha has immediately started the moment he's been back from injury, and he's been injured within a space of a few games. A player of that caliber, I really hope this time is when he sort of solidifies his place in the team. But I think for this weekend, the only change that could happen if Maguire is fit is, of course, Euro being ousted. Delict will be on the right, Maguire in the center. Shaw, of course, has been very impressive. He will retain his place. Already played a lot more than he had in the entirety of last season. He's shown that pace that was uncharacteristic of him before. Also backed an assist against Brighton, which will do him a world of good. All in all, I think the back three setup, which was, I mean, of course, extremely under the scanner before, is growing in comfort. The side has shown confidence with, of course, Cunha and Mbumo doing very well in the space of these last few games. Cunha was slightly lackluster the last game, but I think that's also because he was going very deep very often to collect the ball and then just playing those short passes and then moving forward but not getting a return. I think it's slightly different from the way he operated against Brighton, but I mean, going forward, of course, it's just one of those stepping stones where the player grows into the system. I feel like Shesko had a bit of a quiet game. There were a couple of really good chances when Bruno, I think, put in a really good ball to him. Another one where I think Shaw really just put one unexpectedly into his path, and I just feel like the first touch let him down a little. Again, it's just phases of a striker growing into his position. Both Cunha and Chesko have been a little short on goals, but I think the gameplay of Cunha is just more than made up for it, and I think Chesko is also just sort of getting a hang of it with these consistent starts. I just really hope, despite Mount being entirely fit and back, that Chesko gets another start. I feel like these string of starts is very crucial for his confidence, for his ability to kind of make the most of the at least the three people at the back who are going to provide him with those consistent balls, them being Mbumo, Cunha and Fernandez. Uh, Casemiro, aka Anks, has suddenly found his way back into the side consistently. Kobe Mainu, of course, it would mean for him that he's going to have to wait his turn until the AFCON begins, and when Ahmad and Mbumo will probably will almost certainly be out of the side for a string of at least 3 games. From what we hear from the training grounds, Amorim is also preparing a separate setup where of course Kobe Mainu will have a very critical central midfield role. Um, that of course will be exciting to see when it happens. But for now, this is quite a formidable side. Sanel Lamens has been a breath of fresh air right since the time he's joined United. Have not lost a game. three consecutive games where they won. Then of course this last draw, which was slightly disappointing. I think what's really refreshing is United coming from behind, not losing the track entirely. They stayed on point. They attacked. It's not a great second half against Forest, but they of course ultimately got that critical goal, a brilliant volley from Ahmad, and almost the winner as well, which is quite uncharacteristic of United going behind and then just entirely losing the plot and crumbling to a defeat. So all in all, the signs are positive. The signs are there that we're headed towards the right path. Honestly, being one of those who just did not understand why Ruben was particularly insistent in playing a system where the players were not able to adapt, I feel like he's crossed that sort of base limit where the players now understand what they're doing. They're growing into the role. Hopefully, it's just ahead from here. The worst is past. But yeah, remains to be seen. Remains to be seen how the game goes. All in all, I feel really good going into the Tottenham game. The players are on point. Just that the Dalot weakling somehow needs to be clipped. I just feel like Ruben has been showing him way too much patience, way too much generosity with these stars with the long game time. Something needs to give. Of course, the backup being Patrick Dorgu is not the best, but if what we hear is true, if Patrick Dorgu has actually been watching Nuno Mendes's videos as per Amorim's instructions, who knows? Who knows? The start might be coming. A good showing would mean more minutes for him, more solidification into the side. Of course, which ultimately means less long throws from the low. But I think that's certainly something the United fans will take into, um, of course, going deeper into the season. I think that's broadly what we should expect. I think United may not dominate possession, but and also may not keep a clean sheet despite of how weak Spurs are. I think they're still growing into that setup where they defend set pieces well, which of course is no excuse for it. Set pieces have always been a weak link for this side. Surely United do not fumble this one against Spurs after losing four consecutive games last season, including that, of course, that incredibly harrowing 1-0 in the Europa League final. It's like every time you see Spurs in the Champions League midweek game, it's just a very sad reminder of what United lacked in that game. And I mean, of course, if you're not scoring in a final, how do you expect to win the cup? This time, of course, there's a lot more aggression, a lot more goal scoring threat from United. The front three is entirely revamped. And if I had to call it, I'd probably say something like a 3-1 or a 4-2. The only thing I'm really afraid of is the backline crumbling. United are extremely volatile when it comes to defending set pieces. I feel like Van der Vaan's recent gain of form is a very considerable threat. He has scored a similar goal as he did in the Champions League, an incredible run, long run that just stormed past defenders. He's scored a similar goal against United in the past. Memories of that, of course, will be at the back of his mind. It's a very good opposition for him to hunt. But this time, of course, we are a much better side. Spurs, I wouldn't say the same about them. So yeah, probably a 3-1 to United. Let's see closer to the game. Hopefully, no more injuries, no more unexpected problems with Manchester United. All right, see you. Bye bye.